Oh, good. Okay, great. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else. What we're doing is this is Thursday, August 17th, and we are in the DCDCA boardroom for our monthly or bi-monthly meeting. And we have 3 locations that are remote. That's for Santa Clarita Water Agency, Valley Water Headquarters Boardroom, and Mojave Water Agency Conference Room. And then we have here our folks. So let me just make sure I stay here on the thing. The meeting is called to order. Could we please do a roll call?
Ellie, good afternoon, board members and public staff. President Palmer,
Here.
Director Millibar,
Here.
Director Martin,
Present.
Director Luna,
Present.
Director Stomera,
Present.
Director Chang,
Here.
and Director Anaptawi.
Here.
Excellent. And for the record, I would like to acknowledge that we also have alternate Director Weed on the line, alternate Director Royce Fast, alternate Director Bob Tincher. And I heard Tony say that alternate Director Keegan is also in the room,
Yes.
and alternate Director Dennis Lamoureux. And Dan Fleury. Oh, we got everyone here.
Oh, this is good.
So thank you.
All right, so if you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There we go. And I kind of like to, before we start, I want to dedicate this meeting to the folks in Maui and what they're going through. They don't need stuff, they need money. So send your money to some kind of a foundation. I know Rotary's got some stuff going, and I'm sure plenty of other folks do too. So let's give them as much support as we can. Okay, so let's get into then public comment. Now, members of the public may address the authority on matters that are within the authority's jurisdiction, not on the agenda at this time. Speakers are generally limited to 3 minutes each. However, I may further limit this time when reasonable based on the circumstances. Persons wishing to speak may do so remotely through the electronic meeting link by scanning the QR code or teleconference number when recognized by the chair. And since these are not items that are on the agenda, we can't answer you or engage in any back and forth when you bring something up. Okay, so do we have any public comment?
At this time, we have not received any requests in person or online.
Fine. Josh, you gotta help me on this one. Do we have to do these separately or can we do them together?
The board's pleasure. It could be a single motion if you'd like.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Martin, so move approval of items 5A and 5B.
What? Okay. Thank you. My speech has been corrected. All right. So it's 5A and 5B. Now we just bring this yes, because we have to bring it to a vote because we're remote. So let's bring this to a vote.
Just to confirm, Director Millibar was first and Director Martin was the second.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure who did what.
All right. President Palmer,
Yes.
Director Millibar,
Aye.
Director Martin,
Aye.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Stomera,
Aye.
Director Chang,
Aye.
and Director Anaptawi.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Minutes approved.
Okay. Let us move on to the discussion items. We will start out with discussion item A, the August DCA monthly report, and this is information only.
Thank you, President Palmer. Thank you, Claudia, for pulling that up. If we could go ahead and move to section 1, summary of work. So reporting on activities from July of this year, which is the first month of the new fiscal year. As such, we're closing out our fiscal year 22-23 accounting and controls. So we're still in the process of finishing out some of the invoices, or at least we were last month. And at the same time, finishing our closeout activities, getting ready to submit our draft reports per the governing documents. At the same time, we're also continuing to assist and prepare all of our new task order amendments, new contracts for the FY 23-24 that we've now launched into, and also doing our procurement strategy planning and any other budget preparation activities that are associated with execution of the year. At the same time, under the program management heading here at the last item, we have made a pretty big push in our programmatic standard operating procedures and management plans. And we're going to continue to work on that. The whole goal of these items is to not only capture the way that we work and operate now in the current phase of the program, but also be ready for if and when we launch and roll into the next phase of work, that we're ready for that type of evolution. Moving into the administrative functions. There's a number of support activities going on here that I'm sure you're very familiar with. A lot of this is supporting the DCA Board of Directors meetings and the activities that we do within the administrative team, managing our change board processes, which are our change management processes. Would also like to point out the close connection between the administrative group's activities with the program management and SOP development work for the organization. Lastly, we have had our internship program, our summer internship program, which we will have an update from Marcy Scott, our HR manager, later in the packet. So I'll reserve, tee that up for Marcy to update you all. But I'm really pleased with, again, a very successful internship program this year. On the engineering front, the engineering team continues their focus on supporting DWR and the Delta Conveyance Office with all of the permitting efforts. Really, it's a number of activities helping the department respond to comments on the draft environmental impact report, providing any updates, requests for clarification around the conceptual designs, as well as any other activities that they may need support with through the various permit initiatives. Field work has been pretty busy. We had a spring program, which I previously reported on. The spring field work was completed last fiscal year. There is still a continuation of the laboratory testing and reporting associated with that work, which we will talk about as item B of the discussion. We do have a need to roll over some funds and scope from last year into the current fiscal year to cover that continuing work. But in addition, there is now the summer investigation program that is active currently, and then planning activities for a fall program. Once the fall program is completed, that will wrap up all of the investigative work that we're doing under the initial study, mitigated negative declaration, to support DWR's evaluation of alternatives and better understanding of really conditions Delta-wide. Any questions on the work performed before I move on into some of the financial summaries and other elements?
What do you look for in the lab with the tests that you collect?
So there's a range of testing that's being performed. I mean, broadly, first put it into two categories, whether it's kind of environmental profiling or characterizing of the soils versus engineering properties associated with the soils. And then within that, there's, a very long list of potential tests. Again, sort of switching back to the environmental side, it's constituents of any concern, it's metals, that sort of thing. On the engineering front, there's, everything is simple from gradation analyses, where you're just trying to better understand the material distribution within the soil, all the way up to more advanced testing, strength testing, where you actually take samples, very high quality samples of the soil, and load it up under pressure and see how it behaves. All of this will feed the further understanding of subsurface conditions and validating of assumptions that were made during the environmental impact reports. All the support work that we've been providing to DWR through the environmental impact analyses and the concept designs. Yeah.
It's from our Zoomers. I just have a quick question.
Sure.
It's when you're going ahead and you're looking at the various different levels, have you found much difference in terms of the layering? Is there a lot of different constituents and different textures going on?
Well, it's a fairly complex environment anyway. We do expect there to be changing conditions. That's natural for an alluvial setting like this. These are all sediments deposited deposited through fluvial actions, through flowing water, depositing and leaving these soils behind. So there is quite a bit of variability. There are some patterns that do emerge. So yes, we do expect and are encountering variability, but nothing that's really outside of the realm of what we would expect in this type of condition. Okay. So Claudia, if we could move next to section 2, community engagement. I just wanted to stop in here and provide a quick update. So we have a number of new items to talk about. We've been creating and posting several informative bits of information. I'll start first with the closer look fact sheets, which are listed in the middle of the update here. So there's a number of different features. These are intended to be digestible and something that you can sit down and read pretty quickly and get a succinct understanding of what these different features and considerations are with respect to the project. We've not only produced these in English, but also translated them to Spanish and Chinese, and also posted these as well to improve accessibility to this type of information. And then we're creating a number of closer look videos associated with these as well, which then talk to some of the key subject matter experts that we have within our program involved in these various facilities to further talk about the key considerations and provide a different way to digest the information and understand the program. So these, I think, have been a really nice addition, and we're going to continue to work on that. I expect you'll be hearing a lot more from Valerie Martinez next board meeting. We'll be introducing Valerie to you all in our senior leadership spotlight, and we intend to have Valerie report regularly on the activities around our community engagement and the other relations that we're putting out there, information that we're putting out on the program. So Claudia, let's now go to section 3, budget summary, please. So this is
Graham,
our,
can I ask a question about section 2 before we move on?
oh, sure thing.
Just a real quick one. I trust that all this new information or relatively new information is readily available on the website. Are we getting any feedback or comment from the public? Any sort of response at all that we know of all this information that's on the website?
I can't speak to it, Director Martin. I mean, I think we have our social media statistics also listed on the page. So there is some engagement. I don't know how much direct engagement is coming from the informational documents that we're putting out. But I know we're going to keep trying, and we're going to keep putting information out there so that folks can better understand the program and better understand what it's all about. I think, Director Martin, that's something that I'll probably tee up for Valerie when she joins us in October, and make sure that's something we can talk a little bit more about in detail.
Very good. Thank you, Graham.
Sure. Director Chang?
Graham, just a quick question on the tours. So you said, it sounds like, the tours are a success. You've got 150 plus attendees. Are these generally staff, or are they, board members, or?
It has been a mixture of staff, regulatory agencies, folks, sort of VIPs or representatives from service areas who receive water from the State Water Project and are interested in understanding more about the project. Business communities. It's a pretty broad range of folks who've been interested in participating. Okay, Claudia, let's go to section 3, please. So here is our budget summary table for the current fiscal year 23-24. We have an approved budget of 39.96 million. To date, we have committed just under 33 million, 32.67 million. So we still have a little over 7 million uncommitted for the year. Right now, in terms of incurred to date, we really are only looking at a few very basic things. It's really the couple months of rent, utilities, and a few other invoices that go out early. The rest we're still starting to just now collect, so they're not showing up yet. They tend to lag by a couple of months before they make it onto the report. But we're all set up for the new fiscal year, and this is the distributions as approved by the budget authorization in June. So now, any questions about budget items? Okay. So next, Claudia, we're going to jump into last year's financials. So that would be section 3A. It's the same table, but for last year. There's a little bit more to talk about here because we did complete the fiscal year and we're pretty close to closing everything out. So I will just highlight, just as a reminder, we had the original budget last year of 31.16 million. We had a full, what we're still listing as the estimate at completion, because like I said, we're in the final stages of closing things out and they hesitate to call it completely closed out until it's legitimately closed out. But I don't expect these numbers to change very much. So at this point, we're sitting at an EAC of 25.3 million. So we have an underrun over 5 million, underrun on the order of $5.8 million underrun. So I'm very pleased with that. That's good performance. There's nothing that we should have done that we were not able to do. There are a couple things that we intentionally deferred based on the status of the program. And this is really going to be instrumental for us in terms of our continued performance going forward. I will note that we have, as part of this summary, we've included in the last sentence there in the top paragraph, there will be a request, which is the next item on the agenda, to move $488,000 from this FY 22-23 budget over to our current 23-24 budget. I can give more details on that as part of the next item, but it's about some of the field work that we intentionally deferred and need to descope from last year and roll into current year. That will reduce the top line budget by that amount. And so the budget surplus will reduce from about 5.8 to 5.33 million. Okay, and then lastly, Claudia, if we could just go to the schedule at the back of the report. This is our new schedule for the fiscal year. So the program management office is continuing to do what they do. It's the, I'll give you all a second to find it if I'm moving too fast here. Sorry.
Have a golf game coming up or something. I don't know what.
Say that I don't wish it so, but
Everybody set? Okay.
so our program management office continues working on the activities I described at the beginning of the report. It's program controls, it's the organizational development activities. So they continue doing what they do on the within the program management office. The engineering team will continue to provide their primary efforts around engineering support to the Delta Conveyance Office associated with all the permit activities. And then at the same time, progressing various supplemental concept validation studies to better understand either concepts that were considered and ruled out during the alternatives evaluation. We want to make sure those are documented and memorialized so we aren't treading back over that same ground. You know, years from now, if there's future design contracts underway, we don't want to go back and reopen old concepts that were thought about and ruled out for good reason. At the same time, we're also considering other concepts that we think might have merit and should be considered in future design phases and documenting that as well. So in addition to the engineering and PMO tasks, we have the field work that, as you know, has been very active. We've got the summer program that I mentioned is underway now, the environmental clearances associated with that, the fieldwork activities themselves, and then the laboratory analysis and documentation that will follow completion of that fieldwork. We're planning for the fall program, so you can see the items there. And I'll note that upon, if the board does consider and approve the request to move the funds from last year over and move that scope into the current fiscal year for the spring 23 lab testing and documentation, we will add that item to the schedule as a continuation of the spring program so that we're fully complete in terms of all the fieldwork activities. So that completes my update. Any additional questions? I see Director Chang.
Thanks, Graham. So, obviously the field exploration is a hugely important part of the program. So can you remind me, with the completion of this year's exploration, are we pretty much done for the initial phase?
Yes, with the completion of this year, with the completion of the fall program, that will conclude the investigative work being performed under the initial study, mitigated negative declaration. That's been work across the Delta, trying to better understand conditions. At that point, we'll wait for DWR to consider the project through the CEQA process. And pending their decisions about any preferred project moving forward, we would then pivot to the project as included in the EIR.
Yes? Anybody on Zoom? Nope. Okay, thank you. And do we have any public comment on this?
President Palmer, we do not have any public comments, requests.
Let us move on to B, which you have alluded to already.
Thank you, President Palmer. Item 6B is the request to modify the budget or to adjust the budget for FY 23-24. There's a memo attached to the package here, and so I'll just quickly summarize and then we can talk about some of the details here. But the revised budget pending this request would be 40.44 million for the current fiscal year. That reflects an increase of 488,000 moved over from last fiscal year, transferred over from last fiscal year. If you recall, in previous years, we encountered the same issue where the drilling that tends to start in the spring cannot be fully completed by the end of the fiscal year because they do the field work, then they do the laboratory testing after they collect the samples, and then they prepare the boring logs and the reporting that goes along with that work. All of that trails the field work. Tends to take them, the better part of the spring, April, May, and June to actually do the field work. So there's a need to continue working on that to finish it up, to do the lab testing and reporting. In past years, we extended task orders for such a reason so that the effort would stay attached with the money that was authorized. But we've decided and agreed going forward that at least given our, in the current phase of the program that we're in, that we will be more rigid in terms of our fiscal year treatments, and we will not extend task orders beyond the end of the fiscal year, which has pros and cons associated with it. The good news is we'll be able to close out the fiscal year a lot sooner. Like last year, we had invoices coming in pretty deep into the fall for the previous fiscal year, and it delayed our ability to fully close out and support a good transparent audit process because of those timelines. Probably the pro of that is that we don't have to do these transfers and descope things and then turn around and add them to new contracts. It's a bit of paperwork movement. But this is the route we're going to go. And I do think it will really help to have an earlier closeout on last week.
So now we don't have any task orders going forward.
Not have any extensions beyond the end of the fiscal year. We start new task orders at the beginning of every fiscal year. We'll close them out at the end of each fiscal year, start new ones at the beginning of each fiscal year. So it's a very clean break. So in this case, we won't be reporting on last year's financials once we close out. So it does streamline and clean up some of that stuff that tends to and linger pretty far into the fiscal year otherwise. So this is a new approach for us. So we fully scoped and funded the field work in the spring because we didn't exactly know where the line was going to be drawn. If they got delayed or things didn't quite launch as we wanted to, it could have been that some field work had to be transferred over. So we scoped everything last year, included it in their task order to fully complete it, even though we knew it wasn't going to get fully completed. But that allowed us to then find a spot that was logical, create a clean break within their work. And we've now descoped it from last year's task orders and last year's budgets, and we want to roll it over and have initiated new task orders and budgets for this amount for the current year. So it's just trying to keep it cleaner.
Questions?
Just a general question. So I'm fully supportive of this, but so you kind of mentioned that this is kind of a break from what we've done in previous years. Was this flagged during the audit previously, or?
I don't know that I would say it was flagged. It just
Okay.
created a little bit of complexity. We weren't all that, I think we still had a very clean audit. It got a little maybe close for comfort though. We still had invoices coming in October, and audit time is not long after that. So I think it just got a little bit close, in terms of time. I think it would be our preference not to have it quite that close. I think I'll let, well, I don't know if your mic lit up, but I'll let Catano answer that.
I would absolutely support that. And we had this conversation last year, and I truly appreciate this because we do want our audits clean. So this really gives us a good break, and we could always reappropriate things in the new year. So this is actually the right way to do it. So we appreciate Graham and his staff working hard to clean this up. So thank you.
President Palmer, if you need a motion, I'd be happy to move it. I so move.
Okay. Is this something that is for information only, or do we, no, this is, oh, approved by minute order. Okay, got it. Okay. Then we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Then let's bring it to a vote.
President Palmer,
Yes.
Director Millibar, Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Estromera,
Aye.
Director Chang,
Aye.
and Director Anaptawi.
Yes.
All right. Item approved.
So let's move on to item number C, which is the amended procurement policy.
Thank you, President Palmer. I will introduce Kathleen Murphy. Kathleen is our Chief Contracting Officer. We onboarded Kathleen in spring of this year. And I apologize that we haven't brought Kathleen to the board yet as a senior leadership spotlight, but we will be sure to do that. We are starting to stack them up, but I have a list, and we'll be sure to bring Kathleen back and introduce her more formally. But in the interim, Kathleen has a presentation on our updated procurement policy that she'll be giving to you all.
Graham, very much. Good afternoon, President Palmer and members of the board. Happy to be here today. The item before you is a request to approve the amended DCA purchasing and procurement policy. Next slide. There we go. My presentation will briefly cover the policy goals, the changes to the policy, and the implementation process, assuming that the board approves that this afternoon. As a means of a little bit of a background, the policy was originally approved based on MWD procurement policies and was adopted by the board back in 2019. And in the last 4 years, certain elements of our procurement procedures and processes have evolved and no longer kind of align with the policy as it was written a few years ago. In reviewing the policy, we had several items and policy goals that we took a look at, and that was to establish a purchasing and procurement authorization and delegation of authority to the DCA, making sure the policy and our procurement processes are compliant with the JIPA, the JPA, state and federal applicable procurement laws, and also to ensure that we have an effective documentation process and making sure that our procurement activities are transparent, that they're in line with all the applicable federal, state, rules and regulations, and that we have an open and competitive process. The summary that we provided in the package is kind of a high overview of the changes, but they generally fall into kind of 3 categories. One, we cleaned up some edits, grammatical, other things that needed, just routine edits that needed to be changed. We've added some specific information where it did not have before. Specifically speaking, was we had no information relative to procurements for ITs. So we've added that to the policy itself. And we also then added some definitions to further enhance the definition section of the policy. So that kind of summarizes the items that we edited. In your package, we provided also a red line so you can see the edits as well as a clean version of the policy. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. But assuming that the board takes action and approves this change, our next steps would then be implementation of a training policy, or pardon me, a training module that we are in the process of putting together so that we can roll that out and have a training sessions in the fall of this year for our staff. And then it also will be part of the onboarding process as new staff members come on board. So that's kind of an overview of my presentation, and I'm happy to address and respond to any questions that you may have.
We have questions. Go ahead.
What did something trigger the update? Was there any particular incident that triggered it, or is it just routine? Hey, let's look at where we are and see.
It was no specific instance. There wasn't in relation to an audit or anything of that nature. I think we took a look at what we were currently doing and compared it to the policy as written and recognized that there were some edits and updating that needed to occur.
leads into, is there a particular process where all our procedures are reviewed on a yearly basis, every 2 years, just to make sure we're on track and keeping up with trends and everything that.
I think that's an excellent question. I'm happy to answer it, or Graham, if you'd like to address it as well.
I will answer, but I think probably Josh and Claudia may also want to contribute here. I think, first of all, Director Luna, those are part of the things that we're working through in terms of our organizational growth and development activities, as we're starting to create the structure around change management and around checking and ensuring that things that we're doing are not getting stale, that they're consistent with the way we actually want to do business. So this is completely in sync with that. And that type of thinking has triggered some of the policy updates that you're seeing and some of the new policies that we're introducing. There's a number of management plans that are being developed that support these policies. So it's not any single instance that has triggered this, but more of a holistic review of where are we now? What do we need to do to effectively do business now? Where do we want to be in the future when, if and when there's a project that moves forward, there's going to be some pretty significant changes here and within the organization. We need to be ready for that. So I'd say it's many of these types of activities are coming out of a more holistic review of, what's the state of our documentation, what's the state of our policies, and how consistent are they with what we think what are the actual systems and things that are working for us.
Appreciate that. And I do support the need to, formalize when things get reviewed so that people exterior thinking doesn't say, hey, what cost it? Just like I did something cause it. But no, it's part of our procedural stuff. So thank you.
I think in terms of, a sequence of updates, we're in the process of developing that, creating, now we're starting to lay out timelines for when plans will systematically be looked at with that type of view. Has anything changed? And we're creating processes for folks to introduce items that we think should be changed. There's a lot that we're developing, and this is all within the sphere of organizational development and transition.
Well, it's continuous improvement.
Yeah, absolutely continuous improvement. Is there anything, Josh, that needs to be added?
No, I think you both covered it. I think, this is a good example. This was one of the first policies we updated when we were an organization. So we're really at that stage where we're starting to build those procedures. So when is it time to start looking at things that were initially put in place just a couple of years ago?
Well, it seems to me that sometimes you don't necessarily need to update things, but maybe setting it out that we would review them regularly in our policy, then that might be a really good thing to at least state at some point. Do we have that? Okay, go ahead.
And we have made that a goal in our overarching plan, is to at least revisit the plans on an annual basis to make sure that whatever is outlined in the plan is consistent with, like Graham mentioned, how we operate the business.
Is that outlined in our overall policy, that we would do that on an annual basis, or at least review them whether or not they need change?
So it's not part of this particular policy. It's part of our program management plan and change management process, and it would address all policies.
Thank you, Kathleen, for the presentation. And I just have two quick questions. I think the first one, you noted that this was kind of patterned after Metropolitan's contracting procedures, which I'm sure is very robust, given the nature of the Metropolitan staff. And following up on Director Luna's question, so I'd imagine that Metropolitan changes their policies, at some frequency. Is the expectation that we kind of pattern ourselves after that as well? When they adopt changes, we take a look at our, contracting procedures as well, or?
I think Director Chang, if I can, is that okay, Kathleen?
No, please go ahead.
I think what Josh was describing was that the original procurement policy was more patterned after Metropolitan Water District's policies. We're now starting to adapt and adopt policies more in line with the way we do business. And so I think that's part of it, as we are standing up as our own organization. We need, not everything fits us, and we have a unique circumstance right now, and we're going to continue to have an even different circumstance in the future. So I think it's starting to try and tailor what might not fit so well, try and tailor it more to how we operate as an organization.
It was a great starting point. Yes.
Yeah, sorry for my misunderstanding.
No.
One more question if I could. So I noted under 4A for contracts less than 250,000, and this seems, pretty routine. I think we're allowing the general manager to have the, the awarding capabilities. I would just ask, so these are just for routine contracts, but I would imagine if there's, contracts or perhaps have a little bit more controversy associated with it. My thinking is that that would be brought in front of the board for deliberation. It's not just set by a dollar amount, correct?
I would say yes to that. The executive director has the right to bring any, particular procurement item in front of the board. So it's not solely dependent on the dollar value.
Thank you for that clarification.
Are there any guidelines for that? Are there any guidelines for that? Just asking. I don't know if it's necessary, but
I don't think there are specific guidelines for that. It's a judgment call. Is that fair, Josh?
That is, and this is in the current policy. And so that's how we've operated the last, few years when we've had it in place.
like a lot of the things in here are addressing like information technology and some of the specifics we need for information technology that are unique to our situation. Okay. Questions? Any?
You have Director Martin and Director Anaptawi who have questions.
Go ahead, Director Martin.
Thank you, President Palmer. Director Luna asked a question that was kind of on my mind, but so I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the response. And I just want to say I appreciate the very thorough staff report that Kathleen prepared. I think everything that was presented made a lot of sense to me. I intend to support the item, and I do appreciate all the information that was provided. Thank you.
Okay. Director Anaptawi.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to comment that I appreciate the changes, the update made, and kind of related to the question I heard from Director Chang on, items that are lower than the limit afforded to the executive director to make the call on for procurement. A lot of the additions included changes to what happens for the informal bidding process, expectations and requirements for the number of quotes to be requested, things of that nature, which I think go a long way to instilling ideals on how we do procurement and an effort towards fairness and ensuring that we get best value for the DCA. So just wanted to say appreciate that, and I think those were great inclusions. And second, the portion, the section on information technology procurement, the nature of information technology procurement is different than that of traditional construction or design service type procurements. And so I know we're dealing with this at the agency I work at. And so this has been kind of a hard to follow target, but I appreciate the recognition that the procurement in information technology space is different, and you've allowed for that consideration. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Great. Any other director input? Okay, we should look for, do we have any public comment?
President Palmer, we do not.
Ching moves.
Second?
Second.
Vote.
Right, President Palmer,
Yes.
Director Millibar,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Estremera,
Aye.
Director Chang,
Aye.
and Director Anaptawi.
Yes.
Excellent. Policy amendment approved. Thank you.
Okay, let us move on then to item D, 6D, adopt a resolution approving the amended travel policy.
Thanks, President Palmer. I'll be presenting this item. So another policy update, this one related to the travel policy. We are required to have a travel policy under the JEPA, and that's approved by this board and then forwarded to DWR for their approval. DWR has approved, this board and DWR approved the previous policy. And what's proposed before you are two cleanup amendments to the policy. The first would relate to who approves when approvals are required for the executive director's travel, who can grant that approval? So generally, travel that's consistent with the policy is permitted, but there are certain instances in which prior approval is required. Currently, the policy provides that all approvals from the DCA are provided by the executive director. To avoid any situations where the executive director's travel would require an approval, we're proposing to have the board president handle that. So the board president would provide those approvals. The second edit deals with foreign travel. So foreign travel is one area that does require or actually is one area that's not mentioned in the policy. Currently, the policy just provides that we follow federal GSA guidelines. And so under those federal GSA guidelines, travel is subject to certain restrictions, and one of those is prior written approval. So this would add foreign travel specifically to the policy, require that it comply with GSA, and then specifically require prior DCA written approval.
DCA then would approve if there was.
Yeah, exactly. There's any proposed foreign travel, it would be approved in advance by the DCA, either by the executive director if it was anyone but the executive director, or by the board president if it was the executive director. And there are clean and red line versions of the policies in your packet.
Discussion on this, any input, questions? No, anybody, any questions online? Any public comment?
Public comments.
Hey, do we have a motion? I make a motion. Come on, guys, let's step it up. Who's gonna second?
Take a second.
Okay, Chang is seconding. Okay, so let's bring it to a vote.
President Palmer,
Aye.
Director Millibar,
Aye.
Director Luna,
Aye.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Rivera,
Aye.
Director Chang,
Aye.
and Director Anaptawi.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, now we are moving on to item E, the Senior Leadership Spotlight. I love this part. And this is Ann-Ariel Vecchio.
Very
Sorry.
close.
Yeah, but not close enough. It's gotta be right. Vecchio. Okay, Sustainability Lead.
Hello, directors, and thank you for the opportunity to connect with you a little bit more today. I'm definitely excited to be here. And I'm especially excited to be here because I actually grew up a couple hours upstream along the San Joaquin. I've had family in Stockton for some time, and I'm today coming to you from San Francisco, where I've been in the last 10 years. So it's nice to be in, part of this ecosystem, if you will, and this team. So I wanted to share with you a little bit today, about my background and experience and just some of the things that I've been lucky enough to work on throughout the years. And basically throughout my career, I've been able to focus on sustainability from a range of angles, from conducting environmental assessments myself to evaluating projects with multiple criteria, to actually developing project concepts that were specifically designed to actually improve resilience and sustainability. And I've been able to do that through various experiences. Most recently with Parsons, I was supporting the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission sewer system improvement program for the last 10 years, where I was the lead resilience and integrated planning manager. I've also been able to work abroad directly with communities in the Peace Corps in Nicaragua. I've been able to work at the National Park Service, helping communities think through how they can actually use their cultural and environmental resources to create economic development and foster tourism for their communities, often those that had been kind of declining because of the decline or change in some of our economic processes over time. And I've also regulated hydropower projects, many of them upstream in the rivers that are coming to us today. And I've also been able to do smaller projects related to community, creating community outreach materials, working to create carbon assessment tools, thinking about what our choices actually mean for the larger environment. Also to thinking through kind of the redevelopment of brownfields. So I've had a a very fulfilling career so far, and I'm very excited to be here and leverage a lot of those experiences to think through what that really means for our project moving forward. And so I could tell you a little bit more about my approach in the sense that I've always had a multidisciplinary focus, from choosing my undergrad degree of environmental studies and international relations before sustainability was a common offering, to recent projects that I've done today. So on the left is an example of an environmental justice area of concern that experiences flooding in San Francisco. And I was able to lead a team that was able to engage with the community to understand their concerns beyond flooding and design a project that was really meant to address a range of issues in addition to flooding. And through that experience, as well as many of my past experiences, I've been able to work with teammates from economists to civil engineers. And I've been able to, although I'm a planner and urban designer with environmental science background myself, I've been adopted by my engineering peers. And I've actually been able to share some of those experiences at conferences. And so that's just a couple of examples on the right-hand side there, where we've been able to share our lessons and kind of banter a little bit about, typical perspectives and what it really means to work together on something that's technically sound, but where it's nested in people and place, and how all that really needs to work together to make a successful project. And full disclosure, we did receive a lot of laughs and compliments on that.
I like that slide. I like that slide.
And all of that focus has been really focused through a lot of my experience at the SFPUC. And so I also wanted to share that I have experience working within a larger team. I was embedded with the program delivery, like the program management team and the client and SFPUC staff there for 10 years, working on a program that was really oriented towards delivering key services, but working in my role to help maximize those investments for maximizing public good across a range of issues. And so that's just a little snapshot of some of the things that we did at the SFPUC. And because I was there for so long, I was sitting with staff in a room pushing buttons myself. Full disclosure, I love mapping on GIS and kind of doing analysis myself. But I also have progressed and been able to actually synthesize those materials for decision makers, policymakers, even the general manager and the public. And so using that range of experience and also just my personal interest at working in a range of scales where, big ideas need to be concrete enough so that people understand the impacts of day-to-day decisions. I also think the reverse, in the sense of what we do every day on the ground also needs to roll up to big ideas. So having that experience is something that I think is key for sustainability. And I'm looking forward to working with the team and all of you on that moving forward. And so I just wanted to highlight a few things that I was able to do, especially in the last program. I mentioned, I was with the PUC, and one of the things I was able to do was actually work with them on the implementation of their kind of custom multi-criteria tool, where they actually worked and sought to evaluate project alternatives across financial, kind of social and environmental criteria. And that was over a few years. And most recently, in that project I mentioned, we were developing a new corridor concept. We also worked with others to update some of the criteria that we were using to actually evaluate that project. So we were able to think through new methods to measure flood resilience across different storm types, as well as some of the community impacts that that project would produce. In this case, we focused on, changes to urban heat or increased biodiversity, as well as access to open space. And we were able to kind of summarize that to communicate, what is the project doing from a core performance perspective, as well as a broader selection of criteria and what that really means for our communities. And so I wanted to I will leave it there, but I'm happy to discuss anything else. And I'm really excited to build on that experience, to be the sustainability manager, where I'll oversee the sustainability policy that we discussed in a past meeting, the development of the programmatic sustainability plan, which we'll be working on this fiscal year moving forward, as well as the project-specific sustainability management plans, which we'll roll out. That's going to entail a lot of coordination with our environmental liaison to ensure that we're consistent with all of our other environmental commitments that are evolving now in the draft EIR, and also coordinating with the functional managers to integrate that all of our sustainability kind of processes and goals are really integrated into our various implementation processes, such as the procurement that we just talked about before, as well as other items. So thank you for that opportunity.
Wow.
Done.
I am so impressed and we are so lucky to have you because I think the type of approaches that we need to take with this project really demands your input. So this is excellent. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Question, yeah, thank you, Ms. Vecchio, for sharing with us, what you've done, what you worked on, and what you're gonna continue to work on. I'm wondering if you could take one more minute and just talk about why why not a firefighter, why not a lawyer?
Right.
Why Ann-Ariel at a young age said the environment is planning?
For sure. I'm old enough that many of my photos are in the garage printed out, as many of you are. So I would love to share with you more visually, but I'll just have to explain that I think just culturally, because I grew up where I grew up, right, being very close to the Sierras, being close to the rivers, that's always important. My mom is actually from Hawaii, so the culture of being connected to land is very important. And my father's from Switzerland, so the idea that you can be in a city and immediately go outside is something that's very core to us. So that relationship of people and the environment has always been core to my interests and something that is worth working on. So I'm very excited to be here. Because we're in such a large system, right, we're thinking about the Delta as a place, but also how do we use those resources to provide core services like water that is actually sustainable in a changing climate for all of California. So,
Sharing that.
thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Vecchio, for your presentation. And yeah, I have to agree with President Palmer. Very, very impressive, suite of accomplishments. So I have to confess my, maybe lack of ignorance. I mean, lack of complete understanding about sustainability, because when when you say sustainability, I kind of think about, more efficient use of resources. That's the first thing I kind of think about. And obviously, as it applies to this project, one of the things I kind of think about is, minimize construction impacts, for example, but I'm sure it goes well beyond that. Could you provide, a couple of other thoughts that you might have on how your expertise might help, bringing that vision to this project?
Thank you for that. Exactly. I think you are right in the sense that one thing that is especially on on some of our minds, because we're actually starting to experience some of these climate impacts is, climate change. So minimizing resources in terms of emissions, minimizing resources in terms of the materials that we use, right? All of that is absolutely part of sustainability, and we'll definitely be going through, a series of kind of workshops and kind of thought processes to think through, what is it that we can actually accomplish? What is it that we're using? When do we have choices to actually reduce the materials that we are using? So that's absolutely part of it. The other part of it is, I guess if you kind of think through the typical pies that sustainability tends to be divided into, right? That's the environmental world, right? The resources that we're using and the actual resources that we impact. But also the other piece of the pie is the social component. So where are you working? How are you working? Part of that has already been accomplished in the sense of how did we work with the community? How did we come up with our project alternatives? Which one are we choosing? So that is part of it. And as we move forward, part of that will be to what extent can we support the local community? To what extent are there choices in our project that can respond to like the design choices and how it looks, or like how community will experience it, or the jobs that they may or may not receive. So I think, we'll go through the full suite to understand that a little bit more, and, understand what's in the scope of what can we do through this project versus, what is something that might be outside the scope of this project. But those questions are core to sustainability, especially as it relates to this project.
Director Martin.
Thank you, President Palmer. Yes, at the risk of being repetitive, I want to thank Vecchio on her background, her education. It's just outstanding, the amount of experience she's brought to the team. And also in regard to Robert's question or Robert's observation about what sustainability is, when you posted your bullet list of focus areas for the project, it kind of comes together in my mind that these are all areas that we need to focus on, and areas that we've been focusing on. So it's good to see that we have a person of your strength and background to lead that effort. I'm sure you're going to be have your hands full, not only now, but going forward. And I certainly appreciate this senior leadership spotlight portion of our program. It's one of my favorites. Gets us to know not only the individual that's providing the leadership, but also what it is that you're going to be doing. So you have my sympathy in some ways because you got your hands full, but
Thank you.
but I think you're certainly well capable of handling it all. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Appreciate everything you explained to us, because that way it becomes more clear, you know. And I think you have really challenged yourself with this project. This is a big one. And if we can deliver this one with your help, we are helping this whole state in a great way. So I'm glad you're on our team, and I hope you're as successful with us.
What else? Well, I think from your background, you'll be able to integrate a lot of different aspects, because that's really important, so that you don't have all the various different groups siloing themselves. And so you're key on this one. Okay, that's great. Do we have any public comment?
I just want to add that all of your support for that by itself is also key. So thank you for that.
Comment?
President Palmer.
No, well, welcome, and yes. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and boy, I'm gonna have to talk to you about mentorships, not just for the mentors here, but the other folks coming up. So yeah, okay, good. Then let's move into item number F, which is the DCA intern program update.
Great. Thank you, President Palmer, and good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Marcy Scott. I provide human resources support to the DCA, and I'm pleased to present a summary report of the 2023 summer internship program at the DCA. And this is our third year offering such program. And why do we do this? We're fortunate in Sacramento to have access to outstanding students. It's a wonderful opportunity to give back in the form of offering our time and experience to prepare students for life after graduation. And we need smart, creative, thoughtful workers in the future to solve big problems, which includes how to design and build the best infrastructure for the state of California. Also, this is a great opportunity to provide education around statewide water issues, as well as issues around the Delta. And finally, the DCA is preparing a sustainable organization to meet future demands for our work plan. Next slide, please. We hosted 5 outstanding student interns this year. They represent UC Davis and Santa Clara University. This is a chart that just shows their academic path, and you can see they're not letting any grass grow under their feet. Next slide, please. This program is not possible without our exceptional mentors. These are DCA staff who are assigned to interns within their field. The mentors assign work on specific assignments within their area of study, plus the interns worked as a group on 2 projects, and they also attended a wide variety of career talks. Next slide, please. This next slide provides just a few examples of some of the specific things that interns worked on within their field of study. And I mentioned 2 group projects. The first was they were asked to develop creative ideas for visual aids and use of technology for Delta Tour participants. And the second group project was to provide feedback on the intern recruitment process and help us improve our outreach strategies for future summer programs. And I will say the interns did just a fabulous job on both of those assignments. And we will be looking at the materials they produced and thinking about how to apply them as we go forward. And another component of the interns' work was career talks, and they attended approximately 7 career talks, plus participated in 4 other forums with experts in environmental justice and sustainability. In fact, Ms. Vecchio sat down for coffee with the interns to talk about all things sustainability. We were also fortunate to host an alumni intern from last year's summer program who has been selected as a California Senate Fellow this coming year. So on the next slide, please. I wanted to just give you a quick sense of what some of these career talks are like. So in the upper left-hand corner is a screenshot from a career talk by Steve Dubnovich, who is a DCA tunnel expert. And along with great information about the DCP tunnel, Steve talked about an earlier tunnel project in his career in Lesotho, a country in South Africa. And Steve and his family lived there for a while and were enmeshed in the culture. It was really interesting. And the second example on the right is a slide from a presentation by Rob McCarthy and Sang-Yoon Min, providing an overview of the program controls function at the DCA and provided an introduction to the interns in risk management. And I just got a kick out of this slide in particular because, you know, how do you talk about risk, especially on a large project like the DCP project? But first of all, you know, we all understand what risk is. Swimming with sharks. We have the famous picture here in the middle of the iron workers from decades ago up in the clouds working on a skyscraper. And then the poor guy at the right who's holding the shooting range target. So it just was clever the way that Sang-Yoon and Rob entered into this conversation. And, you know, program controls doesn't get a lot of attention, except in today's meeting, I guess it does, but it's typically not an area we really focus on, yet is critically important. So we are very happy we can provide an interdisciplinary overview for these students. And next slide, please. We were fortunate this summer to have a few excursions. In the upper left corner is this is our second year. We've been able to take the interns on their first day to the Sacramento Municipal Utility District Museum of Science and Curiosity. There is a DWR sponsored exhibit there called Water Challenge, and it provides facts and information about statewide water issues. It is an excellent exhibit. And it's a great way to introduce the interns to general water issues. And then the big picture on the right, the first week of the interns, they were able to join one of the Delta tours. And this is a photo at Big Break Regional Shoreline, where there's a wonderful map of the Delta stamped into the concrete there. And then the final picture in the left bottom area shows the interns at a geotech field site. And in this picture, they're watching a geologist evaluate and analyze a soil sample that had just been brought out of the ground. And next slide, please. Lastly, this program is a benefit all around. Interns see and experience work in their field in real life, and they also get to experience work in a professional environment and learn about things such as how to ask concise and thoughtful questions in meetings and time management, and other important elements. They also have made a lot of connections, people in all kinds of different fields. And as we know, it's really important to continue to meet and learn from others. Also, the DCA receives valuable work product. We're looking forward at some of the technology enhancements they told us about. I will need further training in that area, but we will certainly look at how to apply those things. And lastly, I just want to say that in the final analysis, these students were hardworking, anxious to learn and absorb. They're passionate about their futures and want to make a positive impact. And for these reasons, we can all be optimistic about this next generation who will step in behind us. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Robert?
Thanks, Ms. Scott, for the update. Maybe a couple of quick reminders for me. So this program is all year round, right? It's not just a summer program. That's the first question.
This is a summer program.
It is a summer, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And then the second question is, how selective are we? I know you mentioned there's like 5 or 6 interns who work for us. Were there multiple candidates for these positions, or I guess I just don't have a lot of visibility to that?
Yes, thank you. There were more applicants than we could take in. So we interviewed all the applicants. We have a limited amount of work we can provide for the interns because it is time intensive for our mentors. One of the challenges we face is our work isn't all public facing. And so we do try to find assignments and things that they can do and that our mentors can oversee and partner with them on. So in that way, we do have some limitations, but we're able to be selective and have sort of a robust review process for selecting interns. We do make them submit a writing sample. And as I mentioned, we do interview them. And we had a great pool this year, really, really well qualified candidates, and unfortunately couldn't take them all. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else here? Miguel?
Fascinated by the slide on the uneven sumo wrestling match and how you would get yourself in that predicament. But I'm sorry if I missed it. Are the internships paid or volunteer?
They are paid. Yes.
Thank you.
Director Martin?
Thank you, President Palmer. I think this is one of the best investments the DCA can make for a number of reasons. I have it classified kind of as a win-win-win. The student wins, the DCA wins by the work product that Marcy just described. I think our overall water industry in California, at least in California, benefits by strengthening and building the reservoir of young professional talents that we'll all need in the future. And as one who was, I guess they called me an intern back in the covered wagon days, but it was more classified as a summer job. But to this day, I just thankful that I was able to do that. It gave me a great launch point into the professional civil engineering profession. So listen, I'm glad we're doing it, Marcy. You've got some really great students helping you there, and
yes,
look forward to hearing more about it in the future. I'm glad we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martin. And this is meaningful work that we do at the DCA, at all the water agencies, and sometimes government work gets a bad rap. I think it's important we continue to educate and invite students into our world. I agree 100%. It's important for our future. Thank you.
So, thank you so much. Any other comments? Okay, do we have any public comment?
President Palmer.
Well, thank you, Ms. Scott. We so appreciate your input and your working these folks together and getting this team going, and my compliments to all of the mentors and people who have acted as mentors, I'm sure you're going to see more. So this is good. It's important work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Then that is that. Let's see, we are on to various reports, I believe I saw next. Yes, staff reports and announcements, general counsel's report.
President Palmer, happy to answer any questions on the written report in the packet. The one thing I did want to note was SB 537. So we've talked about this in the past. This bill would allow some additional flexibility for multi-jurisdictional cross-county bodies to have remote meetings without making each meeting location need to be listed on the agenda. By our October meeting, we should have a pretty good idea of whether that will move forward and you know, can provide a full update at that point to the board. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
What does now, how flexible does that allow us to be?
It would essentially allow any director to attend a meeting from a public office of your member agency without making that that location a complete teleconference location.
So it doesn't require then having a quorum in the room.
That's correct. So there also is no requirement that there be a quorum, a physical quorum in the room like there is under AB 2449.
Any questions? No? Okay. Then Treasurer's report.
Hi, President Palmer. My name is Bernadette Robertson. I'm reporting on behalf of Katana Kasaini, your treasurer. The preliminary treasurer's report reflects transactions for June 2023 and total fiscal year 2023 results. The report is preliminary pending the result of the authority's financial audit that is currently ongoing. Beginning cash balance was $709,976. Total receipts for June were $3,271,373, representing contributions from DWR, and total disbursements were $2,568,512, resulting in an ending cash balance of $1,412,837. In addition to the cash, the authority's balance sheet as of June 30, 2023 includes almost $3 million of receivables from the DCO, $79,000 of prepaid expenses, and $3.6 million of accounts payable, leaving a net position of about $82,000. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Have any questions? Any questions from the Zoom folks that I missed? No? Any questions from public?
Comment requests.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson, for your report.
you.
And we're very glad to get it. Okay, then we are moving on to item 7C, the DWR Environmental Manager's Report.
Hi, I'm Catherine Marquez. I'm here for Carrie Buckman today. Thank you for having me. So for the general environmental planning update, we are continuing to work to finalize the environmental impact report, which we expect to certify by the end of the year. Also, you may have seen in Mavens on Wednesday, there was a Delta Commands project update, which included information on a recent agreement between DWR and Contra Costa Water District. While our impact analysis identified some effect to Contra Costa Water District water quality based on our CEQA thresholds, that impact was less than significant. However, in acknowledgement of that effect and consistent with the approach taken in California Water Fix, we have agreed to include a mitigation measure that consists of a new pump and interchange that would connect to a currently proposed Delta Conveyance project maintenance shaft to an existing Contra Costa Water District facility. This interchange does not provide new capacity, but instead it will provide an alternate conveyance route for water that Contra Costa Water District has an existing water right. For the CEQA updates, our subject matter experts have made a first pass through the individual comments, and we're now working to refine those responses and pull them together into complete letters to include in the final EIR. We are also continuing to prepare common responses that address themes from multiple comment letters. And our next steps are to make appropriate edits to the draft EIR to be included in the final EIR. For NEPA updates, the Corps is working on a similar process for responding to comments and making appropriate edits to the environmental impact statement they are scheduled to finalize the EIS early next year. For the geotechnical efforts, the soil investigations that the DCA is conducting are continuing under the initial study mitigated negative declaration for the soil investigations in the Delta project. The current focus is over water borings, and we continue to update our 2-week look ahead schedule, look ahead map on our public website for the public to see where we are working. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Nope. Anybody online? No. Any public comment?
Comment requests.
No public comment. Okay, well, thank you very much. Much appreciate that input. Okay, now we are on to verbal reports. Anybody have verbal reports other than me? Okay, all right, guys, then you're gonna bear with me. And I am noted for being a really good nighttime reader to children. So don't go to sleep, okay? Basically what I'm doing is we have been working on a letter that I've been helping work on. Valerie's been working on it. We've been putting this stuff together. I'm going to read some of it to you. You can cringe if you like, but I'm going to do it. And the reason I'm doing that is because we've been trying to get it out there, and it's something that needs to be said, and it is and I'm going to read it into the public record, and we're probably going to put parts of it at least into various different locations. I'm going to skip the intro because this is the choir right here, so we're not going to do the choir bit. But for public record, I'm reading now. Here we go. Governor Newsom's proposals to streamline the environmental review and construction process on large infrastructure projects initially included the Delta Conveyance Project, but after several weeks of negotiations, the final package of bills does not. So what does that mean? The Delta Conveyance Project already has undergone an extensive analysis under the California Environmental Quality Act, and nothing in the governor's streamlining proposal would have changed or abrogated that. The draft environmental impact report does what the law requires and much more. It thoroughly informs decision makers and the public about the potential significant effects on the physical environment of the proposed project and includes methods to avoid or substantially reduce the significant environmental effects to the extent feasible. Significant effort has been made to be responsive to local concerns related to effects of the project on the people of the Delta, tribes, and disadvantaged members of historic and legacy communities. Valuable input from our Delta-based stakeholder engagement committee helped us develop a suite of effective methods to considerably avoid or minimize potential environmental effects and other local concerns. This includes minimizing noise, traffic, power needs, aesthetic effects, boating and waterway effects, land disturbance, and overall project footprint. It is important to note that the proposed Delta Conveyance Project has not been eliminated or delayed in any way. It will be funded entirely by its beneficiaries and users and public water agencies participating from the Bay Area, Central Coast, San Joaquin Valley, and Southern California. The planning and permitting for the project will continue to move forward in the same manner as before. Large-scale infrastructure projects take time and require a great deal of community and stakeholder input. This project is absolutely vital to California's water security. While this year saw extraordinary levels of precipitation for our state's water supply, we are still facing a challenging and uncertain future and must be prepared for dramatic swings in annual weather challenges from drought to flood and back again. This project is critical to ensuring there is safe, affordable water for communities throughout California, which is why Governor Newsom, the legislature, and our partners across the state continue to push this project forward. We look forward to continuing our work and broadening our partnership with all stakeholders as we keep moving toward the completion of the Delta Conveyance Project. Ta-da. There you go. Had to get that in. Sorry, guys, just had to.
President Palmer,
Yes.
President Palmer, is it possible to share that with the board?
Sure, that would be fine.
And for this to be an op-ed, is that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that was the intent.
Got it.
We're working on it. Okay,
Thank you.
and yeah, anybody else have any other public comment?
President Palmer, appreciate the preview of that. And as soothing as your voice was, it did not put me to sleep. I think it was a gripping message. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine line there, you know. Okay, then I believe we have anything for future agenda items that anyone wishes to bring up? No? All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, I got the gavel. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.